So thank you, Antonoaldo. Thank you for the opportunity to speaking to the Economic Times. Let us start with the results, bumper results outpacing many global peers and the sluggishness of the industry. Uh, when are you here in IATA in India, you see the energy out here. So what makes this geography an outlier? Because as we see most of the developing and first world, the pace of air travel, there is a growing worry that pace of air travel will slow down. This geography seems to be outpacing the global average one. What's driving that? And what does it mean for Etihad in this part of the world?
I mean, thanks for having us. It's always GDP, right? Every time GDP growth happens, if GDP is growing, right? I mean, aviation grows at least two folds, two times GDP. So, I mean, we're in a region, I mean, Middle East and India. So, and if you see the relation between GDP and number of people flying, you see there is an untapped market, right? I mean, I come from Brazil. It happened in Brazil, right? Brazil in the early 2000s, we had about 30 to 40 million passengers. Then GDP was growing for 10 years. Brazil came to 90 million passengers. I still remember that in about 2010, India had about 80 million passengers. India is growing more than 5% per year, right? So is the UAE. So, I mean, aviation is growing this region at least 2x GDP, 10%. So it's all about GDP,
Right.
all about GDP.
Right. So what does that mean? Where does India stand now in terms of pecking order, the market importance, when you look at Etihad from the global perspective?
I mean, Etihad is a very diversified airline, right? We fly to many places in the Middle East. We fly to 11 destinations in India. We have about 170 weekly frequencies to India. That's not much, to be frank. I mean, it's about 25, right? 20 frequencies per day. I mean, Etihad has 250 flights a day, right? So, but India is important for us, right? But Etihad has a very, I would say, diversified strategy. We're very big in Europe as well. We're very big in Southeast Asia. Abu Dhabi is growing a lot, so we have a lot of point-to-point demanding coming to Abu Dhabi. And we also are growing the US, East Coast, right? So I would say that India has a very special role in our network, important, but it's as important for us as Europe, as important for us as Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi a bit more because it's our home base, right? And it's also as important as Southeast Asia. So this all goes together. You see what I mean? It's not one or the other, but they all come together very nicely.
Since India is such an important market, where does India stand today amongst all the destinations that you all operate to as a market?
Yeah, India is about, I would say, for us, 25% of our market. So, but Europe is about 25, 30 as well. You see what I mean? So I cannot compare India to Portugal. You see what I mean? I have to compare India to Southeast Asia. You see what I mean? Because it's a continent, right? It's like, I mean, when we fly to Europe, we see Europe, right? When we fly to India, we see India. So I would say that in terms of size, it's about the same, India, Europe, and Southeast Asia, right? And US. So it's about all they have about not including Abu Dhabi, 25, but if you remove Abu Dhabi, it's going to be about 20% each. So again, I mean, we're not here in a race to say who is the first one, right? We're here really to make sure that our customers, they have an extraordinary experience. And I think the value proposition that we have to India is really good.
Right.
In terms of destinations, you have a very strong presence in both Bombay and Delhi. Do you see the deployment of more aircraft towards these destinations, or do you see an opportunity to operate out of tier two if obviously the capacity is allowed?
The UAE, the Abu Dhabi, India traffic rights allow us to fly a certain number of seats per week. About 2 years ago, we were flying only half of these seats. About 2 years ago, the Indian carriers were flying only 30% of the available seats. Today, 0 seats available. So the Indian carriers in the past 3 years, they tripled their capacity into Abu Dhabi. and Etihad doubled the capacity to India. So this is great news for the Indians, right? For the market, the local market, because now you have more capacity into the market. So right now we don't have more seats available, and the Indian carriers, they also don't have more seats available. So the amount of flights that you can add from India to the UAE and vice versa is almost zero today. It's one or two, but almost zero, right? But we believe there is a huge potential to fly to secondary markets in India. So today, I mean, you saw probably in the opening remarks in the IATA General Assembly how important it is for India to develop, not to develop, but to take advantage of the airports in secondary markets. They're not really secondary because you have millions of people living in those cities, right? I mean, we would love to have the opportunity to fly to more destinations in India. We have 11 destinations today. We believe we can go to 17, 20 destinations like this. If today we get the traffic rights to fly to more destinations that we don't fly today in India, we're going to do it. Because, I mean, these customers are underserved today. And if they want to go to Abu Dhabi, either they don't have a flight or they have only one option. And every time we have only one option, it's too expensive. So we believe we can contribute a lot to these cities that don't have, that we don't fly to today, and that either they have only 3 flights a week or 4 flights a week to Abu Dhabi, or they actually have no flight to Abu Dhabi.
So when you say the seats are saturated from both sides,
Not saturated. It's not
Exhausted.
saturated. It's exhausted. Yes, there's potential to grow much more.
right. So it has been a contentious issue in India, and you know it very well about the expansion of international flying rights. India has been very conservative over the last few years because it wants to build a global hub here. So if there are no such opportunities to increase rights, would you be interested for probably because there are codeshare partnerships that you have done with Akasa? How does that help further, or like is there a chance for a equity investment in an Indian airline through which you can get more share of traffic?
I mean, I think there's a lot of conversation about India being conservative on the traffic rights, but I think what the Indian government was doing is correct. If the traffic rights to Abu Dhabi was not used 2 years ago, why I'm going to increase the traffic rights? So I honestly cannot criticize India for that because it's the traffic rights were not used. So first you use it, then I give you more, right? It's like when you have a kid, right? If you give too much money to the kid's going to spend the money, right? Why I'm going to give more traffic rights if the traffic rights are not being used? I think the question is now, right? Now, and I think when any place in the world where you reach that situation, you have conversations. So I think conversations are going to happen. They're going to take place. And I think it's good for everyone that, I mean, protectionism. I don't believe there is any objective to protect anyone. You see what I mean? People want competition. People want the best to, and in these traffic rights, it's always both. You see what I mean? So if the Indian carriers are taking all the traffic rights, they're in good shape, right? They're doing well. So I think India should celebrate the fact that, I mean, the likes of Air India, Indigo, Akasa, I mean, they have taken all the traffic rights to Abu Dhabi, right? So let's see it as something good, right? That I mean, you don't need protectionism. You see what I mean? Because you're efficient, right? Actually, if you see the unit cost of the Indian carriers, it's very good. The Indian carriers can compete very well. So I don't see a reason. I don't believe there is any objective function. You read about that, but I don't believe there is, right? Because in the end, I mean, everyone had the capacity, and as far as equity investment is concerned, I mean, we don't get traffic if we do equity investment. That was actually the misconception of Etihad before. Etihad was buying airlines all over the world because Etihad was assuming this would bring traffic to Abu Dhabi. It doesn't work. Etihad lost billions of dollars. So the answer is a clear no. Etihad doesn't do equity investment in airlines. What we do is partnerships. So we do code share. Like Indigo has just announced a partnership with KLM and Delta, right? I mean, we have a partnership with Akasa. It's a very tiny partnership, a very small partnership. I mean, and like we have code shares and interlines across the globe with many different airlines. We partner with Air India. We have interline with Air India. right? So, and it's mutual benefit. Otherwise, Air India wouldn't have, right? So that's the way to go, not equity.
Any plans to expand those partnerships?
These partnerships, I mean, they're always expanding. The teams, they work together. They see the seats that are available. So it's an ongoing relationship. So um, there is always room to expand. For instance, how does it work? Okay, if there is a certain flight that Air India is not full or Etihad is not full, the teams can use those seats available. So it expands if the seats are not used. It contracts if the seats are used. You see what I mean? So it's a good partnership. We're very happy with the partnership we have in India.
Etihad has a Journey 2030 goal, for fleet.
It's a plan.
Yes. Where does India fit into that plan? And are there any specific goals or plans that you have for India by 2030 that you would like to achieve?
We want to make sure that as we grow, Etihad is growing. We want to make sure that as we grow, we balance the network, right? So we have a network. We have to balance the network. So as we get more traffic rights, if you have to think differently, right? You have to think like this. Look, in reality, the different countries, they are competing for aircraft because the most scarce resource in the world today is aircraft. So countries that are not allowing aircraft to come, they're going to lose because there's going to be less stimulation in the market. So as countries, they open up seats for Etihad, traffic rights for Etihad, we deploy planes. But we do that in a way that the network is balanced. So let's assume we get more seats in India in 1 year, in 2 years. I'm going to add a little bit more in India. I'm going to add more in Abu Dhabi. I'm going to add more in Europe, right? I'm going to add more in Southeast Asia. So Vision 2030, which is our plan, doesn't have a specific goal for each and every market because we need to be flexible to adjust to the different evolutions of some markets. So some markets are going to open up in one way, and other markets are going to have a demand evolution in a different way. So let's say Southeast Asia picks up, and demand is booming Southeast Asia, and the economy is booming Southeast Asia. And let's say they open up, right? Slots and traffic rights. I'm going to put planes there. Let's say India is also booming, but it doesn't open up. The planes that I'm willing to put in India, I'm going to send there.
Right.
You see what I mean? So it's actually, we don't have this. The mandate that we have on the shareholder is deliver extraordinary customer experience and make money. So we are going to fly to the places that we can make money. So if the India market is doing well, growing, and it provides more seats to Abu Dhabi, we're going to be adding here. If not, we're going to add somewhere else.
Is an IPO on cards anytime soon?
I mean, IPO is not a target, a goal, right? I mean, it's just another way for us to finance the airline. I mean, the airline is doing very well. Not very well, but doing well. Very well, we'll get there one year. But we just announced our results for Q1, 30% more net income than last year. I think this year we're going to have our best result ever. We are on track to beat last year. Last year we did about 6% net income. You just saw Willie Walsh saying that, if I'm not mistaken, the average airline in the world is doing about 3% net income, right? We're doing 6. That's twice as much as the average.
So, but does these good numbers mean that?
Yeah, I'll get there. So we paid dividends last year.
Yeah.
So although it's not the management decision, right, to IPO, I think the shareholder now is scratching their heads, right? They're saying, look, why I'm going to IPO if I can get dividends from the airline, right? We're making good money, right? Our balance sheet is very strong. Our leverage is very low, less than 1 times EBITDA. So we're not leveraged. We can grow using our own cash flow. So if I were the shareholder, I would say, look, why? And it's for the shareholder to decide. So, I mean, we don't have a date. We're ready to go anytime if the shareholder decides to go. We don't need the cash. We're going to pay dividends again, probably this year. So if you IPO and you're a shareholder, Ryanair is buying back shares.
Yes.
So airlines that do very well, they buy back shares. So you see what I mean? So I think the IPO is a very easy decision when the airline is not doing that well and needs money to grow. It's doing well, but not that well. I think Etihad now is doing a little bit better, and the IPO, I mean, would happen, in my personal view, only for different reasons than raising cash. We don't need the cash, so there is no date.
What can be those pushing reasons?
I mean, if we grow more than we can generate cash, then you go to the capital markets. But that's not in the plan right now. Vision 2030, it's all self-funded. All self-funded. I don't need any dollar from the shareholder. So because we're generating cash, I mean, if you have a 6% net margin, and it's going to grow, okay? This year is going to be more. And if you're generating cash, so it's good health, the airline, and we're going to do that without any incremental seat in India.
Right.
You all have done brilliantly in the previous quarter, as you rightly mentioned. But do you see a little tepid response for this quarter, given that there have been a lot of airspace closures? And
No, we don't. We have this diversified approach. Of course, when we had although some airspaces are closing, others are opening up, right? And one compensates for the other, right? So we see, right? Every time there is some tension, right? We see some demand fluctuation, but it comes back very quickly because we're not betting in one place. We're not betting in one place. I cannot bet in one place. And our view is that whoever offers us opportunities to grow, we're going to go and take it, right? And we really believe that airplanes are so scarce that, I mean, there's going to be plenty of opportunities in the market.
Do you see anytime soon about the transit hub from India to the west coast or to the east coast shifting from Dubai to Abu Dhabi? You have a US pre-clearance.
I don't focus a lot on. I really think that this narrative of transfer versus point to point is the wrong narrative, right? I don't see the world like that, right? There is no transfer without point to point, and there is no point to point without transfer, right? So if you look at places like Dubai is 45% local, huge local market. Actually, all the airlines that fly to Dubai, they fly local.
Absolutely.
You see what I mean? So I think the narrative is the network carrier model works very well only if you have local demand, right? So I was the CEO of TAP Air Portugal. TAP Air Portugal was 60% transfer, 40% local. If it was 85% transfer, 15% local, would not work. You see what I mean? If it was 80% local, 20% transfer, would not work. So I don't pay, honestly, I don't pay much attention about this transfer hub changes because I think they don't take into consideration the local market dynamics, right? So Abu Dhabi is growing like crazy. The Indian carriers, 2 years ago, 1/3 of the seats, and they only do point-to-point to Abu Dhabi. Most of them. I mean, we have some interline with Air India, right? So I don't see the world through those lenses. I think if you take London Heathrow, let's take the big hubs in the world, right? London Heathrow, I mean Atlanta, Charlotte. I mean, they all have a lot of local demand, right? So we need to make the pie grow together, because if I focus only, the point-to-point business model is dying, right? The only airline that can do that very well today is Ryanair. That's the only one. Even Indigo is connecting people.
Oh, of course.
A low-cost connecting, right? I mean, Indigo is partnering with other airlines to connect. So I do believe, I was the CEO of an airline in Brazil, Azul. We had a low-cost connecting model, like Copa, brilliant model, right? Air Arabia, they connect in Sharjah a lot, right? So I do believe that the model is connecting and point-to-point. And I believe in that model a lot. That's the model we have in Etihad. And sometimes it's better to take the connecting passenger because it's more money, not less money. There's also a misconception that the transfer traffic is also always lower yield. It's not. Connecting can be high yield, Connect can be low yield. It depends.
Thank
Thank
so
you,
much for
guys.
the opportunity.
Thank you.
So much.